What if the most powerful force in the known universe was not out there in space, but coiled, dormant, and waiting right at the base of your spine? For over 3,000 years, the masters of ancient India described something extraordinary living inside every human being. They called it Kundalini Shakti, and they said, when it awakens, nothing about you is ever the same again. Now, before you dismiss that as mysticism, consider this. These weren't poets writing metaphors. They were scientists, rigorous, disciplined, obsessive scientists who spent decades in near total isolation studying human consciousness the way a physicist studies matter. Their laboratory was the human body, their instrument was the mind itself. And across thousands of years, from the high valleys of Kashmir to the caves of the Himalayas, they produced documentation so precise, so internally consistent, that researchers studying it today describe it as one of the most sophisticated maps of human consciousness ever created. So the question isn't whether this knowledge is real. The question is, why haven't you heard about it? So, what exactly is Kundalini? The word comes from the Sanskrit root kundal, meaning coiled. The texts of Kashmir Shaivism, one of the most sophisticated spiritual philosophical traditions ever produced, describe it as a dormant energy, coiled like a serpent 3.5 times at the base of the spine, at the point the ancients called Muladhara, the root. Now, here is what separates Kundalini from every other spiritual concept you may have encountered. Kundalini is not a belief. It is not a metaphor. It is not an abstraction you are asked to take on faith. According to every tradition that has systematically documented it, Kashmir Shaivism, classical Hatha Yoga, Tantric Buddhism, the Shakta traditions, Kundalini is a force, a living, conscious, extraordinarily intelligent force that exists in the body of every human being without exception. The question isn't whether you have it, you do. The question is whether it is awake or asleep, and it has been sitting at the base of your spine, waiting your entire life. But here is where the accounts become genuinely extraordinary and genuinely uncomfortable. Because Kundalini awakening, when it actually happens, is not what the wellness industry has led you to believe. It is not a warm glow during meditation. It is not a tingling sensation after a yoga class. Every serious first-hand account ever recorded describes something far more dramatic. The heat, beginning at the base of the spine and moving upward like liquid fire. The involuntary movements that no act of willpower can stop. The sounds rushing water, a deep roar, thunder that seemed to originate from inside the skull itself. One of the most documented cases in modern times is that of Gopi Krishna, a Kashmiri government clerk, an ordinary man by every measure who in 1937, during a morning meditation practice he had maintained for 17 years, experienced what he described as a burning sensation, beginning at the base of the spine, rushing upward and exploding into his skull in a fountain of light. He spent the next 12 years barely able to function, unable to work, his nervous system overwhelmed by something it had not been prepared to receive. And then on the other side of all of that, he described what every single person who has genuinely gone through this process describes, in almost identical words, across cultures, across centuries, a clarity that does not fade, a stillness beneath all movement, a knowing that cannot be unlearned. Modern neuroscience has had something remarkable to say about this. Researchers studying advanced meditators in deep samadhi states found gamma wave synchrony across every region of the brain simultaneously, the highest frequency of brainwave activity ever recorded in a human being, a state that, under ordinary conditions, neuroscience had considered impossible. Now you might be wondering, why does any of this matter to me? I am not planning to sit in a Himalayan cave for 17 years. Here is why it matters. Because Kundalini, even in its dormant state, is what the ancient texts consistently identify as the source of all human vitality, creativity, and intuition. Every moment of sudden clarity you have ever experienced, every time you knew something before you could rationally explain how you knew it, every creative breakthrough that seemed to arrive from nowhere, fully formed, uninvited, perfect, according to this framework, that was Kundalini, a partial, momentary, uncontrolled flicker of this energy, a single spark from a fire that, in its full expression, is something else entirely. And the reason this knowledge was historically kept private, transmitted only from master to student, in carefully controlled lineages, under strict conditions, was not gatekeeping for its own sake. It was safety. Because energy at that magnitude, moving through a system that is not prepared to receive it, causes damage. This is not metaphorical. Which is why every serious tradition that worked with this energy had the same first instruction: prepare the vessel before you activate the force. So, let's come back to where we started. What if the most powerful force in the universe was already inside you? Not as a motivational poster, not as a spiritual affirmation designed to make you feel good for 30 seconds, as a literal, documented, physiologically real phenomenon that has been studied, mapped, and transmitted by some of the most rigorous minds in human history. What would change if you took that seriously? What would change about how you inhabit your own body, knowing it houses something of that magnitude? That practice begins with understanding, and understanding begins here. In the next video, we go deeper into the exact map that Tantric masters drew of this energy's journey through the human body, spine by spine, center by center. If this made you curious, that curiosity is already something. It means something in you recognized what was being described. Subscribe, and we'll go further together.